I just got the new 2022 Polygon Xtrada 6 that retails for $900. And there's 4 things I like about it and 4 things I don't. Like my last Polygon, I'm super impressed with how this bike came packaged. It also came with all the tools needed to assemble the bike, but I recommend you buy some grease for the seat post and front axle and some chain lube. There's really not much to assemble on these mail order bikes. You just install the bars, then grease up the front axle and put on the front wheel, then tighten the pedals, and that's pretty much it. This bike is already tuned up before it's sent out, so the shifting and brakes are usually dialed right out of the box. Quick disclaimer, Bikes Online did send me this bike to review it, but they've never told me what to say. They just want my honest, straightforward review. But I wonder how much this bike weighs. All right, looks like this bike weighs 31.2 pounds. Now let's go ride. Well, that ride was interesting. I haven't rode a hardtail in so long, and plus I've been riding a pretty fancy bike lately, so I have to change my mindset and look at this bike from an entry-level beginner perspective. And some people might call this an XC bike, but I disagree. XC bikes are meant to pedal and go fast, and this bike is more of a comfortable trail bike that performs well at low speeds. The 67-degree head tube angle makes for a stable ride. I also like how the fork has 120 millimeters travel, which is longer than the axle and the nucleus, but more on the fork in a minute. But let's get into the likes and dislikes. Before even riding this bike, I was really blown away by the build quality of the frame, something that really doesn't show on the pictures of this bike on the Bikes Online website. The best thing about this bike is the drivetrain. This bike comes with a Shimano Goodyear 11-speed drivetrain that goes up to 51 teeth and has a clutch to avoid the chain slap and drops. And that's a really nice drivetrain for this $900 bike. I've tried other budget drivetrains in the past, but they weren't good at all. I've ran this same Goodyear drivetrain on multiple other bikes before, and it's a rock solid, trustworthy drivetrain that wouldn't need to be upgraded like the junk that comes on the Schwinn Axum or the box 8-speed that comes on the Nucleus. The next thing that I like is the tires. My Xtrada came with Maxxis Ardent tires that are tubeless ready. And if you look on the website, it shows that the bike comes with Entity tires, but Bikes Online told me that for now, this batch of Xtradas were coming with these Maxxis tires. And since I live in the desert, I deal with a ton of cactus bikes, so I'll be going tubeless right away. Next up is these Shimano M201 hydraulic brakes. The 200 series Shimano brakes are great entry-level brakes that I've used a lot in the past. They're a pretty solid brake set that work pretty good, but they definitely need to be bedded in first before taking this bike on a proper trail. If you don't do that, the brakes might feel underpowered or have uneven braking. The rotors are 160 millimeters front and back, but I do wish the front had 180 millimeters for a little bit more stopping power. There's a few things about this bike that I don't have an issue with, but others might. First are the quick release axles front and back, and there's a cult following of through axle people. But I asked the Saga squad if they've ever had a quick release axle fall off mid-ride, and 80% said no. A lot of the people that said yes either didn't tighten the axle enough, or the axle broke from rust or accidentally sending it too hard. All entry-level bikes under $1,000 have quick release axles, but the big issue is if you want to upgrade your wheel set. The mountain bike industry and their marketing have moved on from quick release axles, and most companies don't even make quick release wheel sets anymore. Next up are the bars and grips. I think that these bars are like 10 millimeters rise, which aren't the most attractive, and a lot of people don't like that. But I find that they're functional, and that's all that really matters to me. I would have liked to see the bike come with lock-on grips, because these slip-on grips are kind of rough, and I want to replace them, but they're a pain to work on and take them on and off. It's really nice to see that the rear triangle is pretty wide and has a lot of clearance. I think that the 2.25-inch tires are plenty for this bike, but I bet it could go up to 2.6-inch tire in the rear. But that brings me to the dislikes of this bike. But real quick, I'm trying to hit 20,000 subscribers, and once I do, I'm building up this Chromag and giving it away. But let's say you did want to go with a 2.6-inch tire. It might not work that well because the rims are narrow at 24 millimeters internal width. Mounting a tire that's too wide for the rim can result in the tire being too rounded, which will wiggle around and have weird characteristics. And that's one thing that the Axum and the Nucleus have is 30 millimeter internal width rims. so they can handle those bigger tires. Plus, a wider rim is stiffer, but remember, this is an entry-level beginner bike we're talking about. Next up is the fork. Like I said, it's nice that the bike comes with 120mm travel, but this fork is a coil fork. And coil forks are reliable and don't need much maintenance, but they're also super heavy. This Suntour XCR32 performed very well for what it is, and it's definitely the smoothest stock coil fork that I've ever tried. And I don't think it's a hunk of junk like what comes on the Walmart bikes that will need to be replaced immediately. I feel like this bike could be ridden for a long time before you're thinking about upgrades, and rightly so because it's a $900 bike. Something that surprised me were these stock pedals, and they were exceptionally bad. I usually don't have an issue with pedals, but something about these were just super slippery. But luckily these days, good pedals are so cheap, like these $25 Rock Bros pedals. My last dislike is kind of a big one. This bike has a 27.2mm seat post, and that might not mean much to a newcomer, but a seat post this narrow has very limited, more expensive options for a dropper post, an upgrade that you'll definitely want over time. The longest 27.2mm dropper that is made is 125mm, and that could be a big issue for taller riders. But let's do a quick comparison between this bike, the Nucleus, and the Axum. And before you accuse me of being a shill for Polygon, know that I have affiliate partnerships with all three companies. The Venus Nucleus used to stand out to me a lot because for $650, you got an air fork and a clutch derailleur, but it looks like the price has gone up $300 and $150 shipping. Man, what happened? Then there's the Schwinn Axum that can get you on the trail for only $450. It's nice that it comes with a dropper post, but that bike can be pretty frustrating over time as you get faster and the chain falls off with every bump. But almost everything else will need to be upgraded for you to ride that bike reliably. Then this Xtrada 6 is $900 with free shipping and multiple frame and wheel sizes, and I'll have an affiliate link in the description. Sure, it has a coil fork and no dropper, but the brakes, drivetrain, and tires are already upgraded in my opinion. Installing brakes and a drivetrain can be one of the most challenging upgrades to do by yourself for a new mountain biker. And installing a dropper post is pretty easy, and this video here will give you an idea on what kind of first upgrades I do on a budget hardtail like this one.